We have this fleet navigating cities, huge rural counties, suburban roadways every single day. If someone were to propose student transportation right now, if we didn't have school buses and someone proposed it, everyone would go, absolutely not. That would cost a ton. It would be, why do we need to do that? It is this amazing relic of a country that recognizes that we need to actually do right by all kids, even the one whose parents don't have the money or the time to get their kids to school every single day on time. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm really bullish on student transportation.
Hi, I'm Wes Platt, Executive Editor of School Bus Fleet. Welcome to The Route, our new content series. Our guest today is Stephen Owens from the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. We're going to discuss the school bus driver shortage. But before we hit the road, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comments are always welcome. Okay, let's get rolling. Stephen, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me.
This academic year, we've heard a lot of talk about the school bus driver shortage, including a nationwide survey where 51% of the respondents called the problem severe or desperate. However, school districts have been struggling with this issue long before COVID-19 and what we're facing this year. You recently took to Twitter and TikTok to rather succinctly explain that it's a little more complicated. Can you lay it out for our viewers?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I work at the Georgia Budget Policy Institute. We're nonpartisan. We are a nonprofit, and really my job is to follow the money. And so I work in the K-12 education space, and this is something we've seen for a long time and have written about well before the pandemic, because whenever I would go speak with school folks, especially school budgeting folks, they would mention that school transportation is treated like it's a separate part of school and is budgeted differently than maybe enrollment for, the classroom expenditures. And for that reason, the state is able to maybe make changes to the way they fund pupil transportation that don't go widely reported. And so one thing we've been watching for a long time is that the amount of funding, at least in Georgia, and I've heard from a lot of people, this is true in a lot of other states as well, the amount of funding for pupil transportation has stayed about flat since the year 2000. We actually gave more money overall for student transportation in 2002 than we did in 2022, the year that we're in, the fiscal year we're in right now. While we gained 250,000 students, the price of fuel, the price of buses has gone up, labor, health insurance, all of these things have increased, but the amount of money has actually gone down overall. And so you can imagine that if school districts are getting less money from the state, which is their primary financier, then they are put in these difficult positions where maybe you keep wages stagnant. Maybe you make changes to the way that you do hours to keep people just under full-time employment. And it made a lot of sense. As I met with bus drivers and monitors across the state, we would hear stories about bus drivers who, work a 3-hour shift and then hang out in the bus for 3 hours. During the winter, can't turn the heat on in the bus, waiting for their next 3-hour shift in the afternoon. And these are decisions that a lot of school districts are making because the amount of money is just not changing, but the needs are increasing. And yeah, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. And the fact that if your parents want a high-speed camera on the side of the bus to make sure that nobody's passing and putting your kids in danger, if you actually want air conditioning, I believe that's like a $20,000 increase in the price of a bus. So we go from about a $77,000 vehicle, or at least it was in 2018, last I checked, to about a $100,000 vehicle, just if you want air conditioning. Really basic stuff that parents justifiably want out of their buses. And then you add in additional priorities, like let's do clean burning fuel, or let's have a speaker system that can talk to elementary schoolers in the back. And so,
or electric buses, which
buses,
which are great. Fleet electrification is, a noble idea, but super expensive under the current climate.
Sounds great if we can pay for it.
Yeah.
And so that is the point that I tried to make in Twitter and TikTok, is that labor shortages aren't really a thing if you can increase the pay and the workers come back. And that's what happens in a ton of industries, is that if you have all these vacancies that are just caused by low pay or dangerous working conditions, by making those changes, those people didn't disappear. They come right back. And so if we were to increase state support, then I think we would be able to see that a lot of those quote unquote shortages just completely disappear. And this is an important point because, at least in Georgia, and I believe in a lot of other states, it's a law to do school transportation. If you live outside of a mile away from the school in Georgia, it is required by law to provide student transportation. And so that money's got to come from somewhere. It ends up coming from other parts of the school, or just lowering or stagnating the labor costs for our drivers and monitors. So that was kind of the main point I was trying to get to. Good deal.
Well, we're going to get back to our topic of the day, but right now we're going to take a quick detour and we're going to get to know you a little bit better. First of all, how'd you get started at the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, and what are the issues that tend to get your attention?
I worked at the State Department of Education for 3 years and really enjoyed my time there. I was able to be a part of the plans that we made for the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the federal law, which ends up dictating so much of how we do public schools. And when I saw a position come open, the idea of being able to write for an independent organization where we're not working for Democrats or Republicans, we really just want to make sure that public education gets better for everyone and does right by everyone, is kind of a dream come true. And I've been here for 3 years now. And I'll tell you, a lot of the big issues that catch my attention is just trying to explain to lawmakers and families and communities that the way things are right now isn't how it has to be. That these are policy choices that we continue to make year after year that can be undone or can be improved upon. And so school bus funding is one that I kind of fight to the death for, because these are the adults that our kids see first in the morning, last at the end of their school day, dictates so how they feel about public schools. It dictates so much about how parents feel about government to see the first government employee they're going to see for a long time, if they have a smile on their face and if they're taken care of. And then other areas, we fight to make sure that public funds don't go to private schools. We fight to make sure that students, based on race, income, that they all have an equal opportunity. And so those are the things I get most excited about and spend most of my time with in the Georgia legislature.
Great. What are your primary interests and hobbies outside of work?
We do a lot of walking and reading. This is so boring in our house, but we live in near downtown Atlanta. And have a couple breweries down the street, and our library is just like a couple blocks away. So that ends up taking a lot of our time. And then fall Saturdays, it's got to be college football. I went to the University of Georgia. I'm going to get kicked out of the state if that's not one of my favorite things ever.
There you go.
Yeah, that's big in our household.
Gotcha. Now, I noticed on Twitter that you were not impressed by the Emmy-nominated WandaVision. Now, how did that show fall short for you?
This is because people I love and respect love WandaVision, and I start watching this show, and I'm like, what? 4 episodes in, you can tell it's really well made, right? But it just wasn't interesting to. I was like, when am I going to be interested in what happens next? And people would say, you got to wait till episode 5, and I'm like, I'm not here to do homework on my TV shows. I don't need to be doing background research on enjoying television. I need to enjoy it right away. I did end up liking it more later through the series, and that just makes for a less interesting tweet. Yeah, people gave me a lot of junk for that. That's funny.
Well, what is fandom if not criticism persevering?
Well put.
All right. Well, thank you for indulging my curiosity there. All right. We're on our way to the last stop on the route for this week. Stephen, you summed up the foundations of the bus driver crisis really well. And obviously, there's an economic answer to this economic problem. Do you want to sum that up again for people just to let them know? And who is it who needs to be responsible for this?
Right. So we all play a part of it. We all need to be holding our lawmakers accountable. Doesn't matter what letter's next to their name, in order to make sure that we are funding every aspect of the school correctly. I think people don't realize teachers are absolutely valuable, not taking anything away from teachers. There are as many school staff working in our schools, on bus drivers and monitors, cafeteria workers, maintenance, custodial. There are as many of those employees helping keep the work of the school going and thriving as there are teachers. We need to do right by the whole work of the school. And I think the pandemic showed us just how much we rely on schools for so much more than just skills acquisition. And so for that reason, we need to be making sure that all of our lawmakers here, that yes, we need to increase the amount of funding for these things, but we also need to be willing to pay for it. And at least in Georgia, there's a lot of common sense, low-hanging fruit revenue raisers that could help do right by our drivers and monitors, by our school bus fleet, not to mention all the other people that are helping like keep our kids safe. And when you, as I'm sure you do, when you actually get into the nuts and bolts of school bus driving and monitoring, one of the safest forms of transportation we've ever seen, right? Something like 70 times safer than actually driving your kid to and from school.
Yeah, even if it's close, even if it's close.
Even if it's close, absolutely. We have this fleet navigating cities, huge rural counties, suburban roadways every single day. If someone were to propose student transportation right now, if we didn't have school buses and someone proposed it, everyone would go, absolutely not. That would cost a ton. It would be, why do we need to do that? It is this amazing relic of a country that recognizes that we need to actually do right by all kids, even the one whose parents don't have the money or the time to get their kids to school every single day on time. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm really bullish on student transportation. And that means holding our lawmakers accountable to actually do right by these folks in our communities.
Well, my last question on this is maybe one of the hardest questions, but you've been on the ground talking to the people that are going through this. Why do you think school bus drivers have been underpaid for so long? Like you said, this has been going on at least since 2000, that it's kind of flatlined. Why has this happened?
I think the short answer is because it can. Because it has been happening. That's been one of the amazing things we've seen from the pandemic, is that a lot of people have taken this really new look at their employment and seeing, is it worth giving up my life for blank? And that's not just a glib answer. We've had bus drivers in Georgia who've lost their lives due to COVID-19. You're coming into really close contact with kids who might not be able to be vaccinated, might not have to be masked. And so as you're evaluating that, and then you're seeing maybe wages go up at Walmart, you're seeing wages go up for other transportation services, it becomes a lot harder, even if you love it. And that's the thing that I love talking to school drivers and monitors about, is so many of them are driven by a passion for these kids that really they feel like they're being pushed out a lot of times, when we should be making sure to keep these employees taken care of and doing right by them. But I think that the pandemic showed a lot of people that if the wages aren't there, if the protections aren't there, there will be another industry that could maybe do this for them, even if the passion isn't there, because you lose that face-to-face with those kids. Very good.
Well, it's time to park the bus for now. Thanks to Stephen Owens for joining us as our first guest, and thanks to you for watching. Post your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Send email to west.platt@bobbitt.com and tweet us at schoolbusfleet. Drive safely and see you next time on The Route.